much for joining me. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Good, good. So I thought I'd start by just saying, did you want to introduce yourself, talk us through the role that you do as Head of Data and Analytics at CV Library?
Yeah, so I've been in the data analytics and data literacy space for the last 5 to 10 years. It's a really exciting space for me, and more than excited to join one of the leading independent job boards in the UK. I don't come from the recruitment space, so
No.
this was a new experience for me, and I love it because I love our mission. Similar to your day-to-day job, making the world work and helping the world work is something that is
Yes.
I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with data being one of the core topics with the introduction of Gen AI,
Yeah.
I feel that we're always in the news in the data space.
Oh, data or CV Library?
I
Both.
mean, I think a little bit of both. We had a couple of great data analytics articles in
Yeah.
the last few weeks picked up by media.
Amazing.
Actually, yes.
Written by you?
No. By our marketing team, we did the analysis.
Amazing. So I guess it'd be really good to understand, just talk us through the topic we've chosen today and why.
So we wanted to talk more widely for data accuracy and quality, link them to business value, and actually look at them in the context of Gen AI and the current situation and evolution in the data space. Because I do believe that these things are interlinked, and a lot of the times there is organizations, candidates, and data professionals that might get them wrong with quite disastrous effects.
Yes, because it's a big topic, isn't it? AI at the moment and how it's implemented, the right and wrong use of it. And actually, if we think about your organisation and our organisation being linked with recruitment, we're seeing that a lot, aren't we, in that space? So it's quite relevant for us to talk about it today, really.
It is because we see more and more prevalent the actual role of Gen AI in our day-to-day life.
Yeah.
It is technology that got adopted. There is always a technology adoption curve, and if you see how quickly the 1 million users was reached by ChatGPT and equivalent tools, it was so fast. Everyone is using it in multiple facets of their life. We have experts and non-experts, but there are common pitfalls that I don't think the non-data professionals really understand. But we see it more in recruitment. We potentially see it good uses as a potential tool that helps productivity and helps people, but bad uses as well, which could make us blunt and all very similar in our CVs and approaches, as well as some of our answers.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I've got some answers for this myself, but I was going to say, what are you seeing? You mentioned a bit there, but what are you seeing the bad uses, or I guess the things we should be aware of when using AI in recruitment? I mean, I guess, what are you seeing it be used for in a bad way that we should maybe
I think it depends
our eyes
on
open
the
to?
usage. This is another tool that inherently is not good and bad. It depends on how we use it. There are certain values, for example, through an interview process. I have had personal experiences hiring for some of my team, and I've had candidates visibly using Gen AI solutions during the interview. And the problem that I have is I believe one of the core values that is needed in an analytics data professional is honesty, because it's one of these values that, when you have quite a lot of senior pressure, or you have preconceptions about what your analysis should show from previous experience, you want that transparency and honesty to be the value of your analyst, to always surface the right things. So seeing the use of GPT or other technologies, Gen AI technologies, to illustrate a generic answer is not very helpful, and it could send the hiring manager into a bit of a spiral, thinking how much of this is actually Gen AI created versus own experience.
Yeah, that's really hard. And you mentioned there you've had your own experience as a hiring manager seeing a candidate do that.
Yeah. It was in a live interview.
Oh my goodness. So what did you do in that? I mean, I guess, what are we going to do to, I guess, be more savvy?
So there is multiple angles to this, right? And as a recruitment industry, I've heard about new systems that pre-interview candidates by themselves. That so there's always two coins of this. I guess I believe that Gen AI. I'm a firm believer in augmented intelligence. So the collaboration between tool and human in the loop to provide the best outcomes. And I do believe that Gen AI potentially will be a powerful tool for all professionals.
Yeah.
I don't believe it will replace us. I don't believe these scenarios where a lot of jobs do not exist.
That's interesting. Some people say the opposite. They say, oh, in a few months, you'll all be gone.
Indeed. But we've seen some of the previous predictions on even autonomous driving back in the 60s, fly. A lot of it hasn't materialized. And we need to understand there are things that Gen AI, generally AI, does better than us. The things that the human brain finds repetitive, boring, that needs to happen fast and requires very little of our intelligence. Generally, we find humans get really tired of that and quite often make mistakes. Whereas for some of these, actually, you would find that the algorithms, Gen AI or not, actually work quite well. At the same point, we saw in the advanced analytics space, a lot of our algorithms actually fail when COVID came along, right? Because all of our recommendation systems, etc., work from history. So when you have an unforeseen event that completely disrupts history, you might still get from cloud vendors suit recommendations because that was your history, but you're not going very far anymore with the lockdown, right? And while your sales representative would have foreseen that in a minute, because we adjust and we acknowledge the situation, we think differently, rather than would take months to change.
Okay, that's interesting. And would you find that data they're reading from COVID times also skews what they put out for now? Because obviously we're not in that same space.
So there is a relative problem on some of these historical views because in a lot of fields we have a disruption of user history. There was an abnormal period for 2 years where the world functioned differently. So as a total. So it is a challenge for data professionals to almost find a way to either adjust or can you discard 2 years of history? It's quite a hard challenge. There are multiple approaches to it.
Because a lot of the way we work now has actually adapted because of those 2 years.
Correct. There is a lot of remote working, although we do see the opposite as well. We did see the more human aspects of being able to spend some time in the office. But I think the key word that we're seeing is hybrid, the best of both worlds. But definitely there have been changes across organizations that were influenced by COVID, and we're moving into new data sets and new territories.
Yeah, interesting. So when we were discussing some of the topics for today, I know one thing that you were quite passionate about, but I know you're thinking, oh, it might be a bit boring for our audience, was around how important it is to clean up our data or the quality of the data, specifically now. And I was interested to see your view on that.
I'll be honest. So we have a lot of different dimensions data quality, but in a world dominated by Gen AI, I think a lot of people in the data space, professionals, are actually understanding that it is eloquent, it is very helpful, but in the end of the day, you need to start from your own personal flavor base for it to build on. If we go to a world where all content is Gen AI related, then suddenly is there a differentiation in our different news articles? They're pretty much similar. And then one of the phenomena with these models is as we get more and more generic and similar information, they get retrained in publicly available data. So we've seen some of them actually drift because they're getting retrained on their own content.
Because when they go out to source the information that's out there, it's already Gen AI
created.
Yeah.
Indeed. And there are elements that we also see regulation So we see European regulation coming in and trying to, in critical domains, illustrate that this is something that is an AI created.
Okay.
We need to also think that potentially there is the element of hallucinations. It's a
Yeah.
technical term where the model creates things that are not true
Okay.
or factual.
Yeah.
And it's because one of the core objectives of that model is to answer a question by combining the existing data. Now, some of this will become better and better, but I think at this stage we need very robust guardrails and we need to be careful. We've seen what misinformation can do.
Yeah.
We've seen how things can get skewed. So that's where, well, I like to talk about data quality because
Yeah.
some of the aspects of data quality is really important. I know it's not the most interesting subject and it's not what potentially a leadership or a board of an organization thinks when they think data. But during my career, we usually provide an analytical support tool
Yeah.
that then allows people to see the results of bad quality when you
Oh.
have that. So if you have a tool that supports your decision and then you get some wrong answers because the data you've inputted
Yeah.
were wrong, it actually affects you.
Yeah.
And I think that end users and people that input data think twice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. So I guess when we're looking to improve our data quality, what are some of the things we should consider?
So first and foremost, it is a process, right? So we should think about how we can automate some of the data capture. If we're talking about data quality errors that come out of human in the loop or interactions, etc., we should see, for example, we need to understand that we are used to automation in the modern world. So if you have a 40 fields form, you would have a lot of your users potentially out of the need to get to the end of it infill bad data quality. So
Right.
there is a question, where can we automate some of this content and use the humans as verification instead of fast input?
That's clever.
Right? So these are things that we kind of have to a certain extent.
Yeah.
We use the autofill things with our browsers and all of that.
Yeah.
Suddenly your address and everything is
That's
very quickly populated.
That is so funny. I literally just spoke to my colleague today and I said, I rely on my computer to remember my bank details.
Correct.
Yeah, so I am a user of all that automated information guiltily. Okay, so so we need to think about how we can create the best scenario for our humans to not fatigue and put in correct data. Is there anything else we need to be aware of in that space?
We can actually think about data quality in more wide aspects. We are inputting data in every facet of our life, right? We can think about, for example, the automated forms that we might have saved in our accounts and browsers that actually infill forms for us. We need to be slightly mindful. I don't know about you, but I've had multiple times where I had a temporary address and then suddenly I send the wrong thing there.
I've done that so many times.
It's autofilled, so it's about the haze that we're going through. So a lot around us, not just as data professionals, but to be fair, as day-to-day humans, is data entry, data quality driven. So we need to pay attention. And if we think about our space a little bit, if I think a CV is a representation of us as a candidate in our professional experience, it's a data representation of who we are, our skills, our experience, and our journey. So while it is great to potentially use tools to enhance it, we need to convey certain of our values and experiences to better assist in the hiring process. And you know what? Some of the things that we have or not have at the same point make us unique, make us differentiate us in that hiring process. And similar employees, I think, are on a journey where we're striving for diversity. And while, as we discussed, Gen AI can hinder, it can also help.
Yeah.
I am hoping that in the future it can remove some of our unconscious biases and assist us towards a better hiring journey.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that, because you've got to be really cautious of how you program the algorithm, correct? Because the AI can also have a bias.
Correct. So it is a field of study and it's something that's ever evolving because
Yeah.
inherently human data capture our own bias. So that
Yeah.
comes through training, through some of these algorithms, but there are techniques to
Yeah.
simulate and create unbiased data. There are also techniques that can identify and remove that bias.
Yeah.
In the recruitment process, a lot of the time you have organizations or managers that actually ask for a tag team.
Yeah.
I have a second person in to try and remove that bias for the whole process.
Yes.
A lot of the time I use personally Gen AI as that. So
Okay.
I use it as a whiteboard or a pitching companion where I can pitch my ideas and get some feedback.
And it
It's not,
works?
yeah,
Yeah.
I believe so. It would, some of the open-ended prompts of ideas you have, it will come back and ask you to refine them. And while I don't use the output, I actually find the process of someone asking me, well, in what field and what's their favorite thing and blah, 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 that it allows you to think in different pathways.
That's so interesting. So you use it as your challenger.
Correct.
I love that use, because I have not tried AI like ChatGPT enough, because it scares me, and I think a lot of viewers will probably see it that way unless they are technical like yourself. But I guess thinking about candidates, employees, people that would like to, they're either data professionals that are, going into this space of having to be aware of AI and potentially use it in their roles, or even the non-data professionals that, like myself, are like, this tool exists, how do we incorporate this? What are some of the skills, tools, what have you, that they need to consider? Maybe if we start with the data professional, because that's your space.
So as data professionals, we need a high level understanding of critical thinking and decision making. I think it is really important in the current society with the multiple data outputs. I actually think that is something even non-data professionals should have, because we have a lot of information around us and a lot of misinformation. Then if we hone that down, some high level, more and more online platforms and even free articles provide some high level education around advanced analytics. Not to a level that a data scientist would know, but to a level that provides you an understanding of these tools, how high level they would function, etc., etc. So we should absorb that knowledge, and then we should potentially experiment in areas of our life that don't have major impact. So, for example, using it as a challenger, it allows you to think differently, but in the end of the day, it's just that. You are not necessarily using the output, using it to help on some of the tasks that we have in our day-to-day life. Like, I don't believe that anyone has gone, oh, this autofill form is really rubbish because once in a while I send an order to the wrong place. We still like the assistance in our day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So I believe in a couple of years that's going to be a tool set that we adapt in our life.
Yeah, yeah. Like adopting Siri.
Correct.
I
Alexa,
don't really use Siri, but
yeah, and there will be users, and there will be people that don't use it, right? But it will be obvious in certain circumstances, and it will be very subtle in others.
Yeah. So we all need to become more savvy and not be so gullible with the information that we're receiving, basically.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When we think about the employers then that are, having to also navigate this space and employ people that want to adopt or adapt and adopt AI, or people that are using it incorrectly, like, what do employers need to consider now in order to stay current and ahead of this trend, but also not fall victim to the trend?
In my view, there are relatively two camps, and there is a middle space. There is the camp that is against of some of these tools, which I don't think is completely right. And then there is the camp that dangerously adopts all the latest trends, right? And in reality, I think the best advice is to stay in the middle. there is a skill in a candidate, depending on the area of their
Mm.
professional expertise, using some of these tools. And look, if you have the best output from a collaboration between a human and the Gen AI
Mm.
algorithm to provide a great CV or letter or whatever, in the end of the day, that's another tool in their usage, and it shows initiatives, it shows some of the values. On the other hand, we need as employers to preserve the values that we're looking at. So
Mm.
potentially it would be great to see from employers advertise some of these values more. So
Mm.
what's the soft skills? What's the honesty and transparency? Like I said, I like hearing, I don't know that from a candidate.
Yeah.
There are other jobs that potentially that's I presume from a medical interview in a sub field that's potentially not as good.
Yeah.
But we need to hone in and cultivate
Yeah.
the values that we want, and that comes across in certain interviews. We do need to understand that everyone is human. So going
Mm.
through that process and providing the right feedback
Mm.
will create a better candidate pool for employers.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's really interesting. So, what would be the thing that you'd love our viewers to kind of take away from the conversation today?
I guess my biggest thing would be for our wider viewers, data professionals and non-data professionals, but everyone around us to think critically when consuming a piece of information,
Yeah.
because there is a brave new world where there is a lot of generated information.
Yeah.
So let's not hastily read something and make it a fact. It
Yeah.
might not be so.
I know a lot of people that do that. It's becoming common.
It is unfortunately something from the structures and the enablement of the digital world or current society. Everything runs so fast,
Yeah.
so it's difficult to stop and think.
Mm.
But in the fields that are really important to us, it would be good to create that critical thinking.
Yeah.
And then from the subset of HR tech and recruitment,
Yeah.
I would say, despite the hype, we need to approach and consider Gen AI as another tool and solution.
Yeah.
And on that journey, it is relatively early
Mm.
on the maturity curve. So we need to bear that in mind when we use it in any solution. I also think there is a field of natural language processing
Yes.
that can do miracles that are exciting new features that we are working on Civil Library that actually could help so much in this domain without having some of the dangers of Gen AI.
Oh, that's really interesting. So, just last point before we finish up, are you seeing an uptake on more roles requiring the natural language processing skill, or are you seeing people go down the route of I need more AI consultants, AI technicians, engineers?
So usually they have matured, and there is a need also for standardization. Some of these things, especially in new areas, you have new job titles pop
Yeah.
up, and what we want from these job titles varies wildly. But what we see is in the data science space, a maturity that indicates specializations. So you have people that specialize more on the image side. That would be companies that have that fact. There are people that specialize more on the language side, especially right now with Gen AI and large language models. And then you have the generalists, which frankly appeal to a wider audience. But I believe that 10 years ago when I started in this field, I come from a data science background. It was very sparse. It was more sitting in innovation, and I feel that data science and advanced analytics is becoming in its own right a very mature function of every business.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That's okay.